Okay, in this video I've been getting a lot of questions, or a lot of questions by hand makers, mesh hand makers. They're having problems with animating the hands. And so I thought I would do a quick video because it's probably a lot easier for me just to go through it and show you than to actually type it all out. Okay, so, and this is good for, even if you don't own, even if you don't have MayaStar, you don't own MayaStar, you'll probably get a lot of good information out of this. Okay, so let me start off by starting the Bento skeleton. Now this skeleton is out of date, but the hands are fine. The hands haven't changed. And so, okay, so first thing we're going to look at is the joint orientation. And I'm going to show the joint orientation of the hands. Okay, now first thing you'll notice in this particular skeleton setup is that there's more joints than there are in the fingers. There's supposed to only be 3 joints per fingers, and you have a 4th one. Okay, this last one here is called an effector. Okay, and when you're doing BVH animations, the exporter that I use, or that comes with MayaStar, was written by Samantha Patterson. It's an open source exporter, and it needs an extra bone on the end of the bone chains so that it exports the rotations and translations of the last bone in the skeleton for Second Life. It won't actually export out this joint, this last joint, or the rotations for this joint. That's why you need an extra bone on the end of all the bone chains. If you're going to be using Samantha Patterson's open source BVH exporter for Maya, don't bother trying to use the exporter, the built-in .anim exporter in Maya, because that's a different format than what Second Life uses. It's just coincidence that Second Life uses .anim, and what is .anim for Maya. So, okay. So, because the .anim file format in Second Life is a homegrown. It was developed by Linden Lab, and so they just happened to decide to call it .anim because it stands for animation. And so it's not the same .anim format as Maya's .anim format. So if you've been trying to export out .anim formats directly out of Maya using Maya's built-in .anim format, stop. You're not going to get anywhere with that. Okay, so you got to use Samantha Patterson's open source BVH exporter, and she is working on a .anim exporter for Second Life, but it's not completed yet. So, okay. So, a couple of things you need to know is that, and I'm going to show a plugin here that is really nice. I'm going to select the hierarchy, and I'm going to show axes. Makes it a little easier to see. Okay. One of the things you'll notice is, now this is true for Second Life. Second Life is kind of weird in that the joint orientations are all straight up on the z-axis, straight forward on the x-axis, axes, and straight across to on the right and left on the y-axis. And I'll go into the top mode to show you. You can see straight forward, straight left and right, and straight up and down. You can't see straight up and down because we're looking straight up and down. Now this wasn't a problem with the old skeleton, the original skeleton, because the original skeleton, all the bones laid on these axes, so that was fine. But then when mesh came along, they made it so that I guess the way they implemented mesh is that they'd always assumed, because they didn't know we would have new bones in the future. So they made it the same. So that when we added bones to Second Life, they had these same straight left and right, up and down, forward and back. Now, normally for animation purposes, you want one of these axes to be pointing towards the child. In the next child in the chain. Because, now let me show you. Now I've selected, the first joint, and then I selected the hierarchy. And if I go to rotate, this, you'll see if I rotate it on the Z, around the x-axis, that you get this weird going off to the side movement. Okay? What you have to do in order, say you want to curl the thumb under, is you're going to do it like this. Okay? But notice how over here in the X, Y, and Z, it's actually rotating in all three axes. And for animating purposes, that actually can get very complicated and quite difficult to do, to rotate things in such a way of always having to rotate them in all three axes. Well, the BVH file actually contains, that's how it has to rotate in all three axes. So in order to make an animation rig much easier to animate with, what you have to do is, okay, wait a minute, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. Okay, this is the other weird thing about Second Life, is that, Second Life is Z is up, X is forward and back, and Y is left and right. Well, BVH animations, Y is up, not Z, because Second Life is one of the few exceptions that actually use Z is up. Y is usually the standard up, and not Z, although it's not super uncommon. It's just, and the BVH format that Linden Lab actually uses Y up instead of Z up. And if you use, now in MayaStar you can access the exporter by going activate MayaStar export animation. Now this is Samantha's, this is a slightly modified version of Samantha's Patterson's BVH exporter. I just did a couple of little minor things. I just had it automatically select the hip joint instead of having you to have to pick it. And I played around with these major and minor axes, and there's maybe a way to have the major and minor axes or axis set up so that you can use Z up. I just don't know it. Maybe there is. I'm not 100% sure. I have to contact Samantha and ask her, is there a particular axes, major and minor setup that will allow people to animate directly in with Z up instead of having to do what I'm going to show you next. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this out of the way. And, okay, so say you want to animate the skeleton, right? Okay. First thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to change it so that Y is up instead of Z is up. So we come here to Windows, Preferences and Settings, Preferences, come down here to Settings, change the World Coordinate System to up axis or axis Y, and click Save. And then I'm just going to click here, and you'll notice that the avatar is on its side. So what do? It needs to be where the avatar is standing straight up and pointing towards the Z axis. So you select the pelvis bone, and you're going to rotate it. Oh, first, once you have select the pelvis bone, you've got to come over here to the Translate Z and copy this. Now these I need to clean this up a little bit because it should be 1.067. There's a couple of little things on the end there that are actually a little bit off, but that's okay. So just ignore that. So we're just going to copy that, and then we're going to rotate. Hold down before you start rotating, hold down your J key. Whoops. First get out of that. Okay. So hold down the J key, and then you can rotate on 15 degrees increments. Just makes it easier to get to 90. And then you're going to rotate it again. Hold down the J key. Click on that one and rotate it so that it's 90 degrees facing that way. Okay, then we're going to go to the Move tool, and I already have Snap to Grid set. So I'm going to snap the grid back to the center. And now this is where in the Y you're going to paste that 1.67. Okay. Now the other thing you also have to know is that when Linden Lab originally created the avatar, they created there's nobody left at Linden Lab to really know for sure, but I've asked Oz, and I've asked in our group meetings where Oz was there and Veer was there and Troy and others were there, and I asked them if this is probably what happened. Okay. The default scale in the preferences, where is that? Under settings? Yeah. Working units is centimeters. The default working scale in Second Life is meters. So when they originally created the avatar in Second Life, or if they paid somebody to create it outside of Linden Lab, who knows? But whoever created it, whether or not it was a Linden Lab employee directly or they hired another company to make it, used centimeters as the working unit. And, Linden Lab, said, we want it to be this, so, we want it to be this tall of an avatar and blah, 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 and gave them basic measurements of the avatar. And they probably gave it into meters. And then when somebody who's making the avatar actually implemented those numbers for the basic dimensions of the avatar, they didn't realize they were working in centimeters. Okay, so the avatar skeleton is actually tiny. It's 100 times smaller than it actually is in Second Life. Okay, but we're kind of stuck with it. So, just to keep everything, so this becomes a problem in that BVH animations uses inches, and Linden Lab converts inches to meters or centimeters, and so the avatar actually has to be like 39 times larger. So that 1 unit of movement in centimeters in Maya will equal 1 inch of movement in Second Life. But I'm only going to show you rotation animations. And if you're just using rotation animations, it doesn't matter what the size of the avatar is. And so we're focusing in on just the hands. So I will probably do another video on getting the correct size for the avatar so that you can move it in three-dimensional space, not just rotation animation. Because with Bento, you can not only rotate the joints, you can also move the joints in. You can also move the joints in three-dimensional space, which is awesome for animation. So back to rotation only. So we got our avatar standing the correct way, pointing the correct way, but you'll notice that the joint orientation is wrong. It needs to be Y up, Z forward, and X straight to the side. Okay, so you open up your orientation joint options that are in Maya. Now this one can also do it, this comment can also do it, but I'm going to show you the way you can do it, with the tools that are actually available in Maya. Okay, so you open up your joint orientation or joint options. Okay, and that's underneath skeleton. There it is, right there. You can just click on that, and that opens this up. Okay, so for Y up, you want to have XYZ selected, and you want to have minus X selected. We're just doing the right hand. Well, actually, first I need to show you. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to do a freeze transformation on these joints to get the joints. Because if we click on this, what's going to happen is it's going to point it should point the Y or the X. Let me see what happens to it. Okay, see what it did here is with this settings of X, Y, and Z and negative X to the second axis world orientation is it points the X-axis towards the next one in the chain, so that when you go to rotate, turn off snap. Okay, so when you go to rotate these, they'll all bend. Let's see, is it bending? Yeah, it bends correctly. And if you notice, it's only rotating the Z-axis. So we're rotating the Z-axis. So that makes it a lot easier to animate, because now it's moving more like you would imagine it's going to move. And you're only having to deal with one number. Now, if you had a mesh rigged to it and you change the joint axes, you'll notice that your mesh gets all messed up. Okay, it gets all messed up, and there's two things. The only way you could really fix that is to detach the mesh from the skeleton, and you detach skin, and I think you can detach where you keep the history, and then you select the bones and you do a smooth bind, and because it kept the history, you don't have to redo the weighting, and it will pop and look normal again. So when you change the orientation of the joints, if you have a rigged mesh, it's going to mess it up. Okay, but I'm going to give you a way which you don't have to do that. Okay, and you won't have to have these little extra bones on the end either if you do it, but we'll get to that. Okay, so how do we make the Y up with, and have it look like this? Okay, because you're going to have a skeleton where Y is up, X is straight to the right and left, and Z is straight forward. Because you see, these are wrong. These orientations are wrong. They're Z up, because that's how it is. That's how you rig. In Second Life, it's weird, because in Second Life, the rig has to be Z up, and Y straight to the left, and X straight forward and back. But animating, Y has to be up. So this is some of the complications that come in it. Like I said, I got to talk to Samantha Patterson and ask her if there's a way that we can change these. There probably is a setting to where you don't have to do the Y up. There probably is a way. I just don't know it. And I'm thinking with the translation in World, it probably does have to be Y up, because it's the BVH format. With the .anim format, maybe we won't have to do that. And like I said, she is working on it, and I believe she has a beta version that she's given me to test, but I haven't really had a chance to test it. And because I know she's been working on it, and I've been working a lot on Bento, that I haven't really had a chance to really give it a good thorough test, and I apologize to Samantha. But she's busy, super busy with her work, her regular job. So she probably is like, I hope she's not too mad at me. So anyway, okay, so we got to get this. Now, if you change the joint orientation, it's going to happen. How to change the joint orientation? Well, you come here to freeze transformation options. Okay, and now this is also true for if you're doing custom bone positions. Okay, custom bone positions, you have to freeze transformation. And I believe you only have to do the freeze transformation on the translation and the rotation. You don't want to freeze transformation on the scales because there's certain bones that have scales applied to them, namely the collision volume or the collision bones. And you can see the breasts are 0.05, 0.05, and if you were to freeze transformation on the scales, they would become 1, 1, and 1. Okay. Now this joint orientation, what it does is it's going to orientate the joint to the world axes, which is straight forward, straight up and down, straight left and right. Okay. And you just select the root and you hit apply. Okay. And as you can see, now we have it to where Y is straight up and down, Z is straight forward, and X is straight left and right. Okay, now this is how it has to be if you're going to be animating with BVH, which is right now the only thing that works with Maya. Okay, so now, but if you will get an error if you have any mesh rigged to the skeleton at the time. When you try to do a freeze transformation, it will say there's incoming connections. So what you have to do is you have to detach the skin or detach your mesh from the skeleton. There cannot be any anything attached unless you have Maya Star. With Maya Star, you can come in here and you come down here to the skin weights tool. I wrote a nice little script. I'm not 100% sure that this is going to work with Y up. I'm pretty sure it will. And you go to custom bind pose and you go create bind pose. And no, it didn't. Ha ha. So that is a limitation of my let me try this. I might have to where you have to select a hierarchy. Let me see if this will work. Nope. Okay. So, just found something not new. There's a, okay, so in Maya Star, if you're doing custom animation, custom bone positions, with Z up, as if you're rigging, you can freeze transformation of those bones without having to detach the skin or your mesh from the skeleton. You can just come in here and go create bind pose. Okay, and that will create. So that will create the skeleton with the custom joint positions. That's only for Zia. It's not for animation purposes. So that's good. I didn't know that until I just tried it. Okay. But if you were doing if you're making custom joints positions for a skeleton, when you're rigging to it, you don't have to detach the mesh if you're using Maya Star and you use just that way. If you're rigging, now, animation is a total different ball game, obviously, and if you don't have Maya Star, then you have to do freeze transformation. You have to do the freeze transformation, come in here to modify freeze transformation, make sure you have scales turned off, make sure joints orientation is turned on. Okay, make sure joint orientation is turned on, select the end pelvis bone, and you hit apply. Okay, and if you have, and that's when you detach skin, make sure delete history is set. If you keep history, there will still be a skin cluster attached to the skeleton, and it will say, oh, there's still something attached to it. Okay. Now, my Maya Star skeleton comes with a whole bunch of sliders connected to it and this and that. And so even if you have all your mesh detached from it, you might still get the error if you try to do if you try to do the freeze transformation on it. Okay, so you want to start off with a skeleton that is clean, that doesn't have anything on it. Okay, and how you do that is select the pelvis bone, select the hierarchy, right? Come here to Windows, Input-Output Connections. In newer versions of Maya, it's just called hypergraph connections. Okay. And then what you do, zoom out a little bit, and hold down the Shift key, because right now all the bones are selected. You would hold down the Shift key, drag over the whole thing, and what that does is it will select everything else. Let's see, what is it? But not the bones. You know, and then you just hit delete. And what that's going to do is that's going to delete this layer here. So that will delete and disconnect everything from the bones. Okay, so if you want to disconnect everything from the bones after you've detached your mesh from the skeleton, that's how you can delete everything that's coming on the incoming connections, and then you'll be able to do this next part, which is the part about freeze transformation. Okay, but if you're using MayaStar, like I said, you can. If you're using MayaStar, now this is just for rigging. You can come in here to Skin Weights Tools, Custom Bind Pose, Create Bind Pose, Create Bind Pose for custom bone positions. Okay. So anyway, so you need a freeze transformation. So you need the skeleton to have. Let me select hierarchy, show axes. So you need your skeleton to look like this. You know, and this is how the skeleton is in Second Life. Okay, this is how the skeleton is in Second Life. These are the joint orientations in Second Life. So you need to orientate, make your animations with the joint orientations looking just like this. With Maya using BVH, using the only export option we have right now, which is BVH. Okay, so how do you make animating easier? Okay, well, there's a real simple way of making it easier. I'm going to close this down. Is you duplicate the skeleton. Okay, so you go edit. I think you can duplicate skeleton, right? Yep, you can duplicate the skeleton. Now there's actually two skeletons in the scene, the original one and the second one. Okay, so say we want to animate the thumb. So let's hide the first skeleton. So we're this. Make visibility 0. Okay, and now this is the second skeleton. Okay, so say we want to animate the thumb. Okay, what we want to do is you want to come in here and you want to come under skeleton, joint orientation, or orient joint, open up the options. Because we're using Y up, Z straight forward and back, X right and left, we want to use this settings. And orient child joints. So you can just pick the first joint in the chain and hit apply. Okay, now you'll notice that X is pointing to the child. Okay, and now you can delete this extra joint. It's good to have this extra joint on there. Now this extra joint, as far as it's called an effector, like I already explained earlier, the effector. This is actually the end position. If you were to open up the avatar skeleton.xml file and you were to read it, you would see that each bone has an end position. And I made the effector joints in the Bento skeleton for MyStar users be the effector joint, the end joint of the bone, so that it makes, when you do this, it makes it point to the direction that you think of. See, it didn't actually change the orientation of that last bone in the joint, you know. So now we're just going to delete that, so it's less confusing, because now we don't need it. If you were just animating the skeleton itself, if you were just going to animate, let's hide this skeleton and show this skeleton. If we were just going to animate this skeleton by itself, you would need the effector bone on the end. You would need the effector bone on the end so that the exporter, this exporter, oh, not this exporter, where is it? This exporter that comes with MyStar. Like I said, it's open source. You can Google it and you can find it. You don't have to buy MyStar to get it. Although this one is slightly modified. So that you don't have to pick the bone, that you can just click apply and it automatically picks the hip bone. Oh, this is a good point, good time. You want to rename the end pelvis bone, all lowercase, hip. Okay, that's the only thing you have to do with this exporter, is make sure that's named hip. Because I add a little bit to this script so that when you click apply, it automatically selects the hip bone. And it needs the hip bone. Otherwise, when you go to upload the BVH file, you won't see anything. It has to have the end pelvis bone renamed hip in order for it to upload to Second Life. Okay. So, like I said, so you'd have to leave this bone here. You know, you want to, I already showed you, select hierarchy. When you go to rotate this, you can't rotate it on one x-axis only, otherwise you get this weird bend. See how it's bending? This weird, it's not curling under. It's because you have to bend it in all three axes. Now you might be just fine with that, you know. You might be just fine with that, and you can go, away you go, you know. But I actually find it easier, I just controlled Z out of that. I just actually find it easier to, and it would have been better had I put this on its own layer, but, okay. Actually find it easier to create a second skeleton and have the joints on the second skeleton oriented so that X is pointing to the next one in the chain. It actually doesn't matter what the orientation of the second skeleton is. It doesn't matter. It could be Z up with Y pointing to the next one in the chain, or pointing the opposite direction, as long as they're, it doesn't, or Z pointing to the next one in the chain, or Y pointing to the next one in the chain, or X pointing in the chain. It doesn't matter. So the joint orientations, as long as it's oriented like this, with one, and it's best having one axis pointing straight up. Pointing straight up. It just makes it easier to animate. Okay, like I said, we can get rid of that last joint and you can get rid of that last joint in the original skeleton too, if you're going to be using this method. So make the duplicate with the extra joint, the effector joint on the end. Orientate the joint of the second avatar, or the second skeleton, and then you can go back and delete the effector joints off of both skeletons at that point, if you're using the method that I'm describing now, using two skeletons. Okay, so, because it makes it so much easier, I'm selecting the base joint, that and selecting the hierarchy, and now I can just rotate one joint, the joint on one axis, and as you can see, it bends like you think it would bend. And it's a lot easier to animate just moving one, because it moves the way you expect it to move. Okay, so that's why. So I'm going to do real quick for the rest of these. All I have to do is, because we have this orient child joint turned on, it's going to orientate all the rest of the ones in the chain except for the one in the very tip. And then you can delete the tip because you don't need it. Same thing, apply. Actually, this one we can go to here. No, we don't want to go there. Yeah, turn off joint orient the child, because that would have done all, I don't know if that would do all the fingers at once. Oh, awesome, it did all of them. Okay, and it did all of them correctly. I was a little worried it might mess things up, but it didn't. It did all of the fingers correctly. And I think you can even select the base. There we go. And did all of them. Okay. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Okay, so now we can go in there and we can delete the effector bones off of them. Because now even the bone at the tip is good. Okay, now there's all sorts of ways you can make rigs to make animating a lot easier. I'm just going to be manipulating the skeleton directly. But this will make even the animation rigs a lot easier. See, now we can select that, select the hierarchy, and now I can just rotate this one. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, I see the problem now. Okay, see now, it's because some of these, the Y is going down. Okay, that's why I didn't want to particularly do it that way. Sometimes the Y doesn't point the correct way. So let me see. Let me see if I find this. No, it still didn't. Okay. I'll have to figure that out. But anyway, you want the Y to be pointing straight up. And that's where this comes in handy. This comet joint orientation. It does it a much better job than this one. And I'll do another video showing how to fix all this with this comet joint orientation tool, so that Y is always pointing straight up. You get a much cleaner thing. Let me see if I do it now. Will I do it? No. Anyway, okay, I'm going to have to play with that and make another video. So let's just concentrate on the thumb. Okay. Because you do definitely want Y straight up. You don't want this Y straight down and some straight up. You want them all to be the same. So, so I will do another video showing how to fix that with comet joint orientation. But I'm just showing you the basics so you can get started. Okay, because it's probably another half-hour video. I think this is an hour video to start with. Okay, okay, so we got this, and say we got all the joints to be the same, where Y is straight up, X is pointing to the next one in the chain, and Z is straight forward. You know, so we have some of these that are pointing straight back, and that's not good, and the Y is pointing straight down, and that's not good. So we need to fix that. But I'll have to do another video to show you how to fix that. Okay, I'm just giving you the basic overall way of how it's going to work. Okay. Let's see. Now, if you were just doing the first skeleton without using the second skeleton method, you would be good to go and you can go ahead and go. But like I said, it's harder to animate that way because you're rotating on all three axes and bones may not move the way you think they're going to move. And especially if you're trying to, if you have motion capture software assumes that you get this kind of thing where one joint axis is pointing down the chain. So those of you out there who are using motion capture software and are having a hard time, this is a good method to use, using a second skeleton set up so that it reacts the way you think it's going to react, or that it should react and will react to your motion capture software and BVH files and all that kind of stuff, if you're importing BVH files. Okay, so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be constraining the original skeleton to the second skeleton. Okay, we're going to be, so let's go here to torso on the second skeleton, chest, left collarbone, shoulder, elbow. Okay, and then we're going to be doing the thumb. Okay, so you have the thumb. Stand away a little bit. Okay, so that's the original skeleton. We're going to be constraining the original skeleton to the second skeleton. I'm sorry. This is the second skeleton, and pelvis 1 is the second skeleton. We're going to be constraining the original skeleton to the second skeleton. Okay, so we go torso, chest, left collar, shoulder, elbow, wrist, come down here to the thumb. Okay, and we can delete the effector bone. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to be constraining it. So you come here to constrain. I would just use a parent constraint. Go into your options. Now I'm going to show you rotation only. Okay, we're going to constrain rotation because this is just a rotation animation. If you're going to do, I think there might be a bug. There is the BVH exporter that comes with MayaStar right currently has Samantha Patterson's older version of the exporter. You can get a newer version that Samantha has made open source on the Bento testing page, and it's called 1.6. Okay, the difference between the two is that the 1.5 BVH exporter can only translate the hip bone, moving it in three-dimensional space, not just it will rotate. You can rotate animation on the hip bone, and you can also move it in three-dimensional space, X, Y, and Z, forward and back, up and down, left and right. So you can animate it both ways, with translation and rotations on the hip bone only. On the 1.5. The 1.6 BVH exporter that, like I said, you can get on the Bento test page. It's open source. Anybody can use it. It can do translation and rotations on all of the bones. Okay, but in this video I'm just going to show you rotation only because it's a lot less complicated. And with the hand animations, you're really going to only want to be rotating the bones anyway. Okay, but just want to make sure that you're aware of that. Okay, so we're going to constrain. And if we were doing translation animations, you would want to have that set for, and that's for all. X, Y, and Z. When you have this clicked, it says if you clicked X, Y, and Z, you might as well just click all. Okay, and you want weight at 100%, or point, at 1. At 1 means 100%. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to first come here. See, we're going to do the wrist on the second skeleton. You want to select the wrist first, then come up here and hold down the Control key and click the original skeleton wrist, and you hit apply. And you'll notice this comes up, a little question mark, or not question mark, exclamation mark, wrist constraint to parent constraint. Okay, so what that does is when we rotate this wrist, it's going to make this wrist rotate as well, automatically. Okay, and you see it did. See, it rotated in all 3 axes, while this one here rotated in only 1. Okay, let me create a, no, I can't create another layer. That's because I renamed this layer. It's a glitch in my, okay, so anyway, so if I were to, okay, let's hide this skeleton, and now we're going to show the original skeleton, and you see that it's rotated. Okay, and if we were to select this and put this back to 0, this is the second skeleton, it moves the original skeleton. That's what a constraint is. We're constraining it. So now we're going to set up the other bones to constrain. So we're going to take the mill index selected in the second skeleton. Remember, this is pelvis 2. It doesn't matter what these bones are named. Doesn't matter what these bones are named. And then you come in here and you select the same finger, hold down the control key, select the same finger in the second one, and apply. Now it's constrained, and you can see that these change color. And we get should get another exclamation point. Got me get another exclamation point. Anyways, it is constrained. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, no. Ha ha ha. Wrong one. I selected the original. Okay, because we're doing the thumb. We're constraining the thumb. I'm sorry. Second joint in the thumb. No, now we're going to constrain the thumb. We just constrain the wrist. Now we're going to constrain the thumb. Select the first joint in the thumb. Hold down the control key. First joint in the thumb. And apply. And now we have a second exclamation point indicating it's constrained. Click, don't hold the control key, click on the second thumb joint, come up here, hold down the control key, click on the original second joint in this original skeleton, and apply. Don't hold the control key, select the third joint, and then come up here. Make sure you click on the third joint, but hold down the control key first. Click. And now you can just hit the G key on your keyboard instead of having to come over here and hit apply. Because the G key repeats the same operation, the last operation that you just did repeats it. So instead of always having to come here and click, it's just easier to select, hit G. Okay, now we have the thumb and the wrist constrained. Okay. And now, let's hide the original skeleton. So that's the original skeleton. It has to have the main hip. We're going to come over here, visibility. You can either type in the word off or hit the 0 and hit enter. 1 is on, 0 is off. Okay, then we gotta select. We'll call this the second skeleton, a duplicate, and hit 1 and enter, or type in the word on and enter. Okay, so now we have our skeleton. Come in here and see, we're going to make a quick animation. Okay. Let's see. Okay, let's do the whole wrist animation first. Okay, and I put this to 48 frames because that's a quick animation, and the default for BVH is I always set it to manual, I set it to 1 to 48. You can have it to 1 to 300, 1 to 800, whatever you want. You could try the key range as well, and then you don't have to set these, but I usually like setting it manually. Have it set to world and world, major axes X, Y, Z, minor axes Z, X, Y. You set your path. Click in here, and I have it set just to my desktop. And you click desktop and you click OK. And this is a slight. Now, if for some reason it says desktop and I just had this mouth animation. Make this. It says desktop, and it'll probably say my animation. I think that's the default that Samantha had it say. I was doing mouth animations earlier, so I'm just going to change this to thumb animation. Okay. And with the .bvh has to be there. Now if it says my animation, or my BVH, I think it is, and it says, project, it should say, desktop. Okay, see, and now it says desktop. It's going to go to my desktop. I think might be a minor glitch if you're using the one off of the Bento test page. It may look like that, but it will say my BVH, .bvh. All you have to do is put a / in there manually. Okay, so now we're going to make an animation. Okay, so you start on the first frame, and one thing about BVH animations is if a joint does not rotate, the information for that joint does not get sent out in the animation. So it's not going to animate it. Makes sense? No animation, no information needs to be sent. So therefore, that joint will not be animated. So, just so that you know that. So, okay. So now we're going to animate, and we're going to come here to your set key options. And I have all keyable attributes, current frame, set IK frame, select all keyable shapes. Just make sure that you have this. Okay, and then over here, you'll see this little key. With this on, what that means is anytime a joint moves, whatever frame you're on, it will set a key for it automatically. Okay. So, but the first keys you have to set manually. You have to have something set so it knows that something has been moved. Otherwise, it doesn't know anything will move. So your first keyframe you actually have to set manually. There's the first one, and you click apply, and you'll notice that there's a little red zone, and it only sets a key for whatever you have selected. Okay, right now we only have the M wrist left selected, so it only set a key for that joint, that bone. Since we're going to do a loop animation, I'm going to come down here without moving anything and hit apply again, so that it starts and stops in the same one. Okay, so now say we come here to frame 24. It could be any frame, just click on it, and we're going to rotate the wrist up. Okay, now you notice there's already a red line there indicating the keyframe has been generated. That's because we had this set to turn on. So anytime you move it, it creates a new keyframe. And if you play it, there's your first animation. You want to get rid of a frame? Look at that. Click on it, hold the right mouse key down, click delete, and you get rid of it. Okay. Now, since we only rotated the wrist, if your avatar was standing with their arms to the side and you played that animation, the arms would stay to the side and the wrist would just move. It's not going to stay out to the side like this. because it's only going to send out, the BVH file is only going to send out information on joints that actually move. So if you wanted it to, say, an animation where their arms were to the side, and you want it to go, you know, from, because most of the time your avatar is standing with their shoulders rotated. Like that, you know, and if you wanted it, so you would have to animate it so that the shoulders come up parallel with keyframing it and then doing the rest. Okay, so that's something you got to remember. Okay, so now let's say we're going to want to animate, so let's just make the wrist move up slightly. Like saying, you know, so we're going to just make it move just a little bit. And then we want it to come back down quickly, back to the position it was before. So we select another frame, zero it out, and so now we're going to have a very slight movement. Okay. So that would be a really slight movement. Okay. Let's see. So let's say we're going to animate the thumb. Okay. Come back here to the first frame, and I'm going to select the first joint in the thumb, not the wrist, and then I'm going to do select hierarchy. So now we have all the bones selected, and I'm going to apply a key. Come here to 48, apply. Now you'll notice that I have a home key set. You can set this in your preferences so that I could just hit the home key on my keyboard without having to open up this window and hit apply. If I had hit set key, this window would have closed after I had hit set it. So I just click apply. Okay, so now I'm on rotate, you know, I could, because I'm doing rotation animation. And now I can take the z-axis handle or sphere, this blue line, or this blue circle. Oh, I messed up. Because this is on, the moment I moved it and let go, it would have set a different key there. So let's see, I'm going to go, say the frame 24. It could be any frame, doesn't matter. You know, the closer you are to the previous frame and you move it, see, now it's bending the way you think a thumb would bend along that axis. See? It's bending the way you think it would bend. And because we had the set here, it automatically created a frame here. Now what's going to happen, because there's fewer frames between where you started here and here, the bone is going to rotate a lot faster. And because there's more frames between here and here, it's going to rotate straight slower. Hit play. See? And if I right mouse click, hold my right mouse click button over here, we come here to looping. I'm holding down the right mouse button over that button. And I have it set to continuous. I could have it set to play once, and it'd only play once. I move the mouse over. See the little box that opens up right next to the cursor? That indicates there's an option. So if you hold down the right mouse button, it opens up that little window. Come here to playback options. If I play oscillate, it will go back and forth. Holding down, and it'll see as long as I hold down the right mouse button, things will open up. And I'm going to say continuous, because I like continuous. And because we made the first frame and the last frame the same frame, starting off with the same place on both of them, that's why it's called a loop animation. So walking animation, running animation, wings flapping animation, those are all examples of loop animations. Okay. So, we've just made our animation. Now we're going to export it. Now, like I said, if you're using the Maya the MyStar exporter, all you'd have to do at this point is click apply. And it should have ran through the animation. I don't know why it didn't. Normally it would play through the animation, so it's getting stuck there for some reason. Maybe it's because I just love glitches that pop up. Maybe it's because I'm running the video. Who knows? It should have played the animation. Huh, weird. It worked in rehearsal. Okay, so anyway, a couple other things I can show you. That's just great. It should have played the animation and exported out the BVH. But for some reason it didn't. Maybe it's getting confused. Maybe it's getting confused because there are bones with the same names in it. I thought just changing the this, that wouldn't have been an issue. Okay. That's weird. Okay. Maybe it's because it's hidden. Maybe the original one is there because it's hidden. Stability on. Generating BVH data. Don't know why it didn't. Normally it runs through the animation. And it says it's generating it, so I don't know what the issue is. Just love glitches that pop up in the middle of making a video. Okay, so normally it would have gone through. Let's see. Where's the other animal? Where is it? There's the original. Oh yeah, it's there. Okay. Okay, so we'll hide the original. Hide the original. Show the second one. Okay, so one of the things you'll notice is that when you select these other bones, you'll notice that they have keys on them. That's because even though all these bones, the second and third have keys on them, because when we selected the base bone and went select hierarchy, they were all selected. See, when you create a key for something, it creates a key on all the bones that are selected. See? I think it's this one, selected. So that it only creates keys for bones that are selected at the time. So that's something you got to keep in mind. So normally that would have exported out the BVH. I just love that. But for some reason it didn't. Or it said it was, but it didn't go through the animation. Normally the animation will run and it exports, and it will say that you've exported it. Then if you go to export over the same animation again, it will say there's an animation over there existing. You want to write over it, and you click yes. Now you can go into Second Life, and you can go to upload animation, and you should be able to upload that animation. So I'll probably stop the video here, and I might add on to this video later once I figure out why didn't it export out the animation like I expected it to. So if it was a loop animation, you'll get these options in the upload window. Now, one of the things about the Bento skeleton is that the preview window for animations does not show Bento animations. As long as you get the avatar standing there, you're good to go. You can upload it. And in the upload window, there are different options, like you click loop. So we just made a loop animation. If you want it to play as a loop, you click that option in the upload window. And you can set the ease in and ease out and all those kind of things. But that's for another video. Like I said, the same process will work for animating custom bone, mesh with custom bone locations. Same exact process. So I hope this hour-long video might be, well, yeah, it's an hour long, just an hour and 5 minutes right now, long video, will help those out there who are specifically making hand animations and using custom joint positions. And I hope that answered a lot of questions. And like I said, I'm going to make another video showing how to use this comet joint orientation if you're using two skeletons. That will set it up much better than the one that Maya has for orientating the joints. So so that's it. I hope this helps out a lot. And believe it or not, it was a lot faster making a video than trying to write all this out in the forums. So I hope this helps. And like I said, stay tuned. I might add on to this video once I figure out why it didn't export out like I expected it to. If not, I'll be doing a follow-up video. Alrighty, thanks a lot. Bye. A few hours later. Okay, so I did figure out what the problem was, or at least I think I got it fixed. Okay, or actually I know I got it fixed, but not 100% sure of what actually fixed it. I was having problems with the layers. Every once in a while you can't create a new layer, and something goes wonky in Maya, and so you can't create a new layer. So I had to fix the layers. So I got rid of the layers, and I've put the skeletons on different layers. This white skeleton, this you see here is white. That's the original skeleton, and this is the duplicate. And the duplicate skeleton, I fixed all or at least most of them. Most of the joint orientations so that X is pointing to the next one in the child and Y is up and Z is forward. So it looks all nice and neat, and that means they're going to rotate on the expected axes. These still have the effector bones, which I could delete, but in this demonstration I'm not going to bother deleting them. And so this is the original, and it still also has the effector bones that you could delete at this point. And that, like I said, these are the way these are set up is how they have to be set up for animation. Z straight forward, X left and right, straight left and right, and Y straight up and down. Okay. So now I'm going to constrain. I'm going to hide. Let's see. I'm going to hide the original. Show the duplicate, which is the blue one. And and to get this is really easy. Okay, and I'll go with the comet joint orientation tool. Like I said, if you remember when I did it with the built-in Maya one, the Y's got all messed up. So all I did was select the wrist, select the hierarchy, and I did aim axes X. That means it's going to aim with the X axes. And for some reason, Z up axes worked. Don't know why. And then you just click joint orientate joint. Now, if the Z was pointing down, if the Y was pointing down like that, you just have to click the reverse. There we go. Okay. So if you so you just change the reverse here so that it does it. So anyway, so now we got this the way we want it. Like I said, it doesn't really matter which is the aiming axes on the second skeleton. Doesn't really matter. You just want to make sure that whatever axes is not the aiming axes that you decide, that one is going straight up, and that it's all the same type, and that the other axis is going forward. Actually, it doesn't really even matter as long as you have something pointing and aiming axes. It just gets really confusing visually wise. Just gets really confusing visually wise if you don't have it nice and neat like that. And you can always hide axes. So if you want to hide the axes for the entire skeleton, select the pelvis bone, which in this case is called the second skeleton. I renamed the pelvis bone second skeleton. Go to select hierarchy and hide axes. Okay, then we might as well do the same thing for the original skeleton. Like I said, this is the way you want the original skeleton, which is going to actually be the skeleton that is exported out in the BVH file. Okay, so we select the hip bone, which we renamed from end pelvis to hip, and then select hierarchy, hide axes. That will make it a little bit easier. See what's going on. Okay, and they're showing both. Okay, so I'm going to hide the original. Okay, so now we're going to, I'm going to quickly, oh, the other thing I did, and I put them all in their layers, I selected, and what I wanted it, when you move, you can select just the end pelvis bone and move it to the layer. But what I like to do always is make sure I select the root bone, which is the hip bone now on the original, which is the end pelvis bone, and then select hierarchy, so I have all the bones selected. That's the skeleton, the white skeleton, and then right mouse clicking and add selected objects. And I did that for both. It's just safer that way. I noticed that if you don't do that, and you go to make it a template or a reference, not all the bones will become a template or reference, even though they're in that layer. Don't ask me why. That's one of the things I sort of found out. Okay, so I'm going to show the duplicate, and now I'm going to go down to the duplicate. Oh no, that is the, okay. Okay, the other thing I did is I did clean. I went, optimize scene just to make sure nothing was in there. I selected all the bones in the skeleton, the original skeleton, before I made the duplicate. I did this. I optimized the scene. I selected all the bones in the skeleton, and I came here to the delete history, edit. I hate it when Maya does this, where you click on a menu and it takes forever to open up. There we go. And I went to delete by type, and I just deleted history, deleted non-deformer, channels, statics, clips, motion pass. I just deleted all this except for the joints, obviously. I deleted all these. I didn't delete the cameras or lights or this stuff down here, just to make sure that there was nothing on the bones. And then I went in here and I renamed all the bones. This is the pelvis bone of the second skeleton, and I just renamed it second skeleton. And then I used the Comet rename tool. Like I said, I'll add a link to where you can download these tools. These are very old tools, but they were very nice and they work really well. And all I had to do was select the root of the skeleton, select the hierarchy, came in here to prefix, and I just put a bunch of underscores for the prefix and hit add prefix. And what that did was it put prefixes in front of all of these. So basically it changed the name of all of them, because when I was trying to do joint orientation with Comet joint orientation, it would say, oh, there's 2 of these in there. Same way with when I tried to freeze transformation and stuff on it, when there were 2 skeletons in the scene. It was getting Maya confused because there was a bunch of bones on 2 separate skeletons that had the same exact name. So by adding an underscore to the front of the beginning of each one of these by using the Comet rename, like say you select the bones that you want to rename, and then you just put in whatever prefix you want. I just put underscores because that way I can still easily read what bones they are. And it also gives you a visual clue that this is the second skeleton. So it makes everything a lot less confusing. So that's comment rename. I'll move that out of the way. Okay. So we've renamed the bones. Well, first we made sure that we got rid of all the history and all that kind of stuff on the original bones. We deleted history and all those things. And then if you needed to, like I said, no meshes rigged to it, you can use the freeze transformation tool. So modify freeze transformation and make sure you have joint orient, and that will orientate the joints to the world axes like we showed before. Oh, that's not the original. That's the original. Oops, and I have to have the bones, all the bones selected first for this one. Show axes. As you see there. Okay, because that's the original skeleton. Okay, and now I'll hide the axes just so it's less confusing. And I'll show the second one. Okay, it turned white because when you select the second skeleton and you select hierarchy, it turns white. Maybe I should have made that a different color. Double click on it. Let's make it, oh, it's a friendly color. I'll make it pink. Okay, so now when I show that, it becomes a pink color. I wish we had more colors to choose from, because different colors can mean different things. Let's see. How about a brown? There we go. So it turns the skeleton brown. So that way when we select the original object mode, it turns green. When you select the individual objects of the bones, they turn white. Okay, so turn that off. Turn this one on. I'm going to select the root of the second skeleton, hold down the right mouse button, select hierarchy, hide axes, just so that it's less confusing. I know I'm going over this a million times, but you can see the axes here. They're just not as easily seen as when they're actually labeled like that. Like I said, the X is pointing to the child. Because this has more than one child, it's sort of looking at the average, sort of pointing at the average. Let's see, so hide axes. Okay, so on to actually animating. Okay, so let's animate the wrist like we did before. Oh, first we have to constrain it, because I unconstrained everything. Remember, I started off from scratch. So you can select it either, if you have the second skeleton showing, you can either select the bone in here or you can select it in the outliner. I like selecting it from the outliner, that way there's no confusion. You can tell this is the second skeleton because it has the underscores before the names. Come put here to wrist, left wrist, hold down the control key, click it, come here to constraint, parent constraint. Make sure that it's all for rotation is selected. We're only doing rotation animations, so I'm only going to constrain the rotation. If we were doing translation and rotation animations, I'd have both these selected. Okay, and then I'm going to click Add. Okay, so that's the first one. I'm going to come down the second skeleton, select the first root in the thumb one, hold down the control key, click on the next thumb one there, hit the G key to repeat the last things, which is constrain. Do the same thing with 2. Hold down the control key, select 2, hit the G key, 3, and where's the 3? There it is. There's 3, and hit the G key. Okay. So now we have everything is constrained. Okay. So now when we rotate the wrist, now remember this is the wrist because we're showing just the duplicate. If we move the wrist up, hide the duplicate, show the original. The original moves up. Now the original hand is turned pink because that indicates that there's a connection, that there's a driver and a driven. You know, the driver is the duplicate wrist and the driven is the original wrist. See? So that's the duplicate. So we can put this back to 0. Okay, so let's create an animation real quick. Move this out of the way. Okay, I'm going to go back to the first, and I'm going to come here to animate, set key. Now I could either just hit the home key, but I'm going to show you here. And apply, go to frame 48, and apply. We'll come here to frame 20, and we're going to rotate it. And because we have the key set on here, since anytime you actually rotate or move it, it will create a new keyframe, whatever frame you're on. If I hadn't moved it here, it would write over this frame, and it would be here. It would be like this. So that's one thing you got to be careful of, automatic keyframing. And if we play the animation, go back to frame 1, play the animation, and we get the wrist moving up and down. Hide it, show the original, wrist going up and down. Okay, so let's go back to frame 20, and see this automatically selects that wrist. Or will it automatically select? No, it won't automatically select that wrist. You have to select the wrist, the bone that you put the animation on, or the keyframe on. So I select M wrist there, go to frame 20, and say I want to, instead of having it come up 51 degrees, we'll just make it 0.5. Okay, so it barely moves at all. Okay, I'm not even sure if you can see that. Okay, now I'm going to animate the thumb. And so I'm going to select the thumb. And remember, this is the, oh, that's the original. See, I almost messed up. See, it's brown. I don't want the original showing. I want the duplicate showing, which is blue. Select the thumb, hold down the shift key, select the last one in the chain. Okay, now that all these 3 bones are selected, go to frame 1, and I'm going to move this out of the way. I'm going to hit apply, go to frame 48, hit apply. Let's try frame 14, and then I'm going to, I can just rotate it up. I didn't do hierarchy, did I? No, I didn't. Okay. I did it wrong. It's not to select the first bone, hold the shift key, and select the second bone. That would work if I was in the outliner. See, this middle one is green. That meant only these 2 bones were selected. In the outliner, you can select the first one, hold the shift key down, hold the second one, and it will select all the ones in that hierarchy. I'm so used to selecting stuff in the hierarchy, I forgot. Okay, so now we're at frame 0, or frame 1, and we hit apply. Frame 48, hit apply, and then we'll come here to frame 14, and now when we rotate it, because all the bones are selected, you can see that it actually curves. Okay, and then because we had the keyframe on, it automatically generated a keyframe there. So now if we go and play the animation, just like before, there we go. Okay, and which is where we got before we I know I'm just going over things that you're reading, but I just want to make sure I show you. And then if we play it here, you can see that the wrist is slightly going up and down because we have the third thumb. It's being driven. It's showing these in red. And if I click on the There we go. Show that if I click on the wrist in the outliner, I just clicked on the wrist to select the wrist, even though it didn't change here, which is odd. Normally it does update, but it didn't. Probably because an animation is playing. If I stop the animation, it updates here and goes to the wrist. Okay, so if I select the thumb bone, you see those. These are showing what's being driven. So that's showing you the connections between them. Remember, the brown skeleton is the original skeleton, and this is the second skeleton. Okay, so we made our animation, and now we get to the point that messed up before, and I hope that it doesn't mess up. Okay, I'm just going to leave this. I showed you this before. I'm just going to leave this desktop, and I'm just going to leave this, mouth animation. I don't want to jinx it. I got it to work before, so I'm just going to write over this particular animation. So you don't have to put this on anything. Oh, scrubbing. I forgot to show those who are not familiar with. These are the number of frames you have. This is the last frame. This is the first frame, and this is the current frame right here. And you can set this to 300 if you want, and have 300 frames or 3,000 frames, however you want. I think there's 30 frames per second. So this is a little less than a 2-second animation, I think. Okay, scrubbing. Now to go to P frame, just click on it with your left mouse button, and that's how you go. What's called scrubbing is where you click on a frame and you hold down and you hold down the left mouse button and you can drag, and that way if you need to see how things are moving, you can see, okay, how does it go from there to there? Okay, and you can see much better. That's called scrubbing. Okay, so it doesn't matter where you are in here. When you click apply, see, because I already had an animation called mouth animation BVH, it says, do you want to overwrite this? I say yes, and ta-da! Did you see the thumb move? Here, zoom in. I click apply. If I had clicked OK, it would have done it and it would have closed the window. Click yes, and there's the animation. Okay, let me do it again. And you can see the hand just barely moved up and down. Okay, so we got our animation, and it's called Mouth Animation 16 BVH. I'm going to switch over to the beta grid, and here we are in the beta grid. Okay, let's sit down. And here's the right hand. Okay. If you want to see the skeleton, you got to open up your develop menu. I believe it's, did you just show develop menu? It's underneath the advanced menu. I can't remember how do you open up the advanced menu if it's not there. I think it's like Control A or Control D. Something like that. I don't know. I'm sorry. Well, let's see. No, the advanced menu is always there, I'm pretty sure. Okay, so you open up your develop menu, and then you come down here to render metadata, and then you come down here to joints, and that will show and hide the joints. Okay, so you come over here to render metadata, show joints. If your graphics card speeds up when you do that, it's perfectly normal. These joints are very lag producing when you're showing them, especially if you show joints. It's going to show all the joints for all the skeletons in your area, and if there are quite a bit of avatars, your frame rate will drop. It's very lag producing, but it's not meant to be shown all the time. Okay, so these are the joints. There's the wrist. There's the first thumb, second thumb, third thumb. This is where the end of the bone is. This is where the end of the bone is. And the end of the bone isn't necessarily where the next bone, the child joint is. See, this is the third bone, and this is the second bone. The end of the second bone is not always in the same position as where the next bone in the child is going to be. Anyway, in the skeleton I was showing you, those joint effector bones, I put them at right here. So that's where they are. But there's actually no bone here. This is just the end point. This was just for diagnostic. So if you have bones in custom bone positions, the end bone point is not going to line up. And don't worry about it. And it's not showing you the axes either. The axes are really straightforward, straight to the left, and straight up and down. You know, so straight forward, straight, left and right, and up and down. That's how the axes actually is. If we go back to Maya, and we come down here, say to this frame, and we select the first thumb, you'll see that it actually is rotating on 3 axes. Well, if I pick the first thumb joint of the skeleton, the second skeleton, you see it's rotating only on 31 degrees on 1 axis. Okay? I know I'm repeating myself, but I just wanted to make sure that people know that this is clear, because this is the tricky part. This is the very tricky part. When this bone bends in the animation, it's not bending 31 degrees. It's not going to be bending negative 31.6 degrees. It's going to be bending 20.85, blah, 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 44.9, negative 22.4 in 3 axes. Okay, because let me show joint, show axes, because that's what the axes are in Second Life. Okay, at least for BVH files. Or the skeleton's actually set up that way too. That's why those axes are like that. But the BVH, see what happens is, I believe Linden Lab takes the BVH file and it recalculates what is rotating and where the axes are, so that instead of Y being up, it's Z up instead. So that's part of the process of when you upload a BVH file into Second Life, is that there's code written for the upload window that recalculates what joint is rotating where. You know, it just swaps the numbers around. Why? What was rotating on Y is now, those numbers are rotating on Z, and so forth. So anyway, so that when it's played in Second Life, this first joint right here, at frame 32, it's going to be not rotate, it's going to take 4.9233, and it's going to rotate the Z, on the Z-axis, 4.923. Okay, so when it got to that frame. So this joint is actually going to be rotating in all 3 axes, not just 1. Okay, so now let's upload this animation. So, you know, you come here to build and upload, and you open up the upload. Close this down. I'll also show it to you from the beginning. Upload, and you click on Upload Animation. And this is my desktop, and there's the animation, Mouth Animation 16. Double click on it. Okay. Might as well give you the whole tour. Okay. Demo hand animation left. Okay. You can type in the description. Here's the priority level. The higher priority level it is, it will overwrite other animations that are playing. So if you're currently playing animation that was level 0 or 1 or 2, if I were to upload this animation to priority 3, it would override the other animation that's already playing. So if you already have an animation playing and it's at a lower priority, if you set this to a higher priority, it will overwrite. It'll take over. It will overwrite that animation. Not overwrite it. It'll overplay it. It will basically turn off the animation for that bone, or for the bones that are for that animation, that are using the same bones as this animation that you're uploading, and it will play it instead. And that's what priority means. So I'm just going to set this to 4. loop. Since this is a loop animation that I made, I'm going to set it to loop. It works just like before. If you don't have it set to loop, it'll just play once and stop. So I'm setting it to loop. Percentage in, percentage out. You don't have to upload the whole animation if you don't want to. So if you wanted to only animate, upload 50% of the animation, or have the animation basically play from 50%, you could start it at 50% and end it at, say, 75%. So that's the percentage of the animation. I'm going to leave this at 0, meaning it's going to play the whole. It's going to start from 0 and do 100% of the whole animation. So I could set this at 10%. It would start at 10% of the animation. 10% of 48 is like 4.8, so I'd probably start the animation at frame 5. If we put this to 10%. Okay. So if this was if the animation was 100 frames exactly, then if you had this at 5%, it would start at frame 5, and this would end at frame 100. Okay, I think I got that. These don't really matter for this particular one, because we are doing a hand animation. It doesn't matter what this is set at. But if you're having it like, say, a walking animation, and you don't have these were here before. Okay. 30 minutes. It's been an hour and a half since you're watching this video, or more. Okay. 30 minutes. Okay. Okay. So, hand pose. These were here before we had the bento bones. We didn't have hand bones. So you could say, when this animation is playing, what do you want the hands to be at? Do you want them to be relaxed, pointing, fist, blah, 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 blah. You can set any of these. I'll just leave it at relaxed. Expression, that was for the face. If you want, when this animation plays, if you want the face morph or expression to be played, you could. But we're just going to leave it at none. Okay. Preview while standing. With bento bones, see, the bento bones actually aren't in here. And they haven't put them in yet. That's something that Linden Lab will probably add maybe sometime in the future, so that you can actually see a preview beforehand. As long as you get this avatar standing here, you're good to go. If there was a problem, it would tell you there's a problem, and you would not see an avatar standing here. Don't bother playing the animation. Yeah, see, the animation really isn't going to do anything. Because you can't preview it. That's something that needs to be fixed by Linden Lab, and I'm sure they'll get around to it eventually. Okay. Ease in and ease out. That's how many seconds. This is a 1/3, 3/10 of a second, which means if you had like a flying animation and you wanted to go to a standing animation or sitting animation, it would play a combination of the two for 3/10 of a second. So it would ease into, but after 3/10 of a second, it's going to be playing 100% of the animation. Okay. If you had the setup at 2 seconds, it would take 2 seconds before the animation, before the avatar was playing the new animation or this animation completely. That's what's ease in, and same with ease out. So sometimes you want a more smoother transition from one animation to another, so you might make that a little bit longer. Okay, so we got the name, we have it set to loop. We're going to upload it now. Okay, and it uploaded. Okay, now I'm going to double click on it, and it opened up. And if you've been playing other animations, it's always a good idea to right mouse click on your avatar and reset the skeleton, because otherwise when you stop an animation, the skeleton doesn't reset itself. And so if you were playing a different animation, it may look funny. Okay, so now we'll play it in world, and ta-da, there we go. And I just have this set on recent and have it set on animation so we can see it right there. Okay. Okay. Close this down, and now we'll look at it from different perspectives. Okay, so there's right from the top, and let's play. Let me try to get this in a similar configuration. Get these out of the way so I can see. It'll be easier to rotate this into a similar configuration so that you can see. There's the animation in Maya, and there's the animation in Second Life. Like I said, remember that third green bone is that bone right there. So if you notice, I'll scrub to that point. Okay, that's the lowest point. So we're looking at it from above. We may not be at the exact same angle as the other one, but you can see it moves in on itself. And if you look here, I'll try to stop it at the right. Oh. Sometimes these are tricky. There we go. And as you can see here, there's the joint, there's the bone. You got it. Sometimes you got to get it right at the right same angle. It's kind of hard. But you can see they line up exactly where they're supposed to be. Whoops. Oh, I hate doing that. Okay. Hard to, because Maya uses different camera controls than Second Life, so when you jump back and forth, it's a little confusing. Okay. So as you can see, there's the angle. And there's the angle. And this tip bone has rotated there. See, it does have rotation on it. Okay. So that's a little bit more like what you expect to see. Okay. So now you've seen those. And the reason why I did the wrist up and down, watch when I stop it. Okay. When I stop it, I'm playing a different animation. I'm playing a pose animation for a T-pose. So it's in the same kind of pose as the avatar, but you'll notice that the wrist is kind of moving. That's because this particular animation I made, I didn't rotate the wrist at all, which means even though this animation here, this T-pose animation is playing, even though it's playing, the wrist is moving. That's just the regular random wrist movements of the avatar is doing when you're just standing there. Let's see, reset skeleton. Okay, so if I go to do that, it's just randomly moving because, oh no, this one isn't moving as much. Sometimes the wrist will really bend depending on what your, oh now it's moving. Okay, depending on what your avatar would be doing normally when it's just standing there. Because, you know, little different animations play. But see how the wrist is moving? There we go. Now if I play it, see how this wrist bent up big time? That's because this wrist in this animation is bent, but this one isn't bending that much. She's just kind of tapping her leg. So anyway, so I purposely put in that animation that we made, demo hand animation, an animation to slightly animate the wrist so that it would sort of lock into that position. Because if I didn't animate the wrist, it wouldn't export out the information for the animation for the wrist. The thumb would move, and the wrist could move up and down according to the animation that this was playing. But because I'm playing the second animation. Okay, anyway, I know I'm going into super detail. Okay, so that's the basics. And this works for if the bones are in custom positions. It doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter, this is I want to get across to you guys, it doesn't matter if you're looking at these. Let me see if I can wear the Bento Angel, and then you'll actually be able to see Bento Angel. Bento Angel, let me try this. Stop this image. Okay. Oh! That is not the Bento Angel I was meant to be. I know I should have tried this before. Okay, let me put it on pause. I'll get the right Bento Angel on, hopefully. Okay. So I got Matrice's and Avastar's Bento Angel, which Matrice and Gaia were kind enough to give me a long time ago. And now we'll play the animation. Okay, so we got the T-pose animation playing. We're going to play the demo, and there's the animation. Now, the deformations, a lot of what you're seeing, those would all be fixed by paint weighting to get it to move. The bones are moving fine. It's the paint weighting that needs a little bit of adjustment. It's pretty good, but needs a little bit of adjustment. And obviously mesh hands. Whoops. Mesh hand avatars would have more vertices placed in a better position. Oh, that's right. Because I have the mesh selected in, that's why it froze. And sometimes you have to reset things. Reset skeleton. There we go. Okay. So you can see, and it's not bad weighting. It's just that there's not a lot of vertices here and stuff. You know, the weighting is not actually that bad. I'd probably redo the wrist a little bit so it isn't quite so. So a little bit of weight painting, a little bit of adjustments could be made to look better. Definitely with a mesh hand, you'll have more vertices to make better deformations. Deformation. So anyway, so that shows you from start to finish how to make a simple animation. And we are now at 1 hour and 40 minutes. So, yeah, so, and then, like I said, you'll notice that when you stop, gotta hit there, it's when you pause or stop it playing in world, it doesn't reset the skeleton automatically. Reset skeleton. But that's a whole nother video. So, alrighty. Well, I guess that hopefully that satisfies everybody's needs. I know it's been a long hour and 40 minutes or more, hour and 45 minutes to sit through, but hopefully it'll be a lot of good information. And I just started talking and went through this whole thing. I'll probably make a shorter video where everything is compacted or compacted, abbreviated version, a speed version, but hopefully those who really need this information, they'll have a really deep understanding of what's going on now and how to do things in Maya. And so awesome. Have a great day, and we'll see you guys later. See you in the next video.